I want to show you my first computer. Have any of you seen the movie Hidden Figures?
Wonderful.
That 7090 they were installing that did calculations 24,000 times faster. That was my first computer. I ran it down at the U of T one night a week. You had tape drives, you had printers, you had punch cards, and you had air conditioning.
What year?
1964.
A very good year, yes.
No, these are all tape drives. And these are all tape drives. And then, but they're in a separate room. We had a room where you took the tape and then you printed it out. And we also had punch card readers because people had to write their programs onto punch cards, and then we'd read these punch card readers onto the tapes. Okay? It wasn't a trivial process. Today, you have more power in your hand. You don't need air-conditioned rooms. You don't, all the input, the output's done here. You can even wirelessly print to a printer. You can search all that information out there. I'm just giving an idea of how much things have changed in the last 50, 60 years. Here I've sort of listed all the hardware platforms. Obviously, Windows and desktops and laptops. You get them from Dell, Acer, Lenovo, HP, Microsoft. Basically, they come in formats of desktops and laptops. They run Intel chips. You got desktop monitors and laptop displays. There's certain browsers, I'll talk about browsers later, and you have certain memory capabilities. I won't go into detail there. On the Mac side, they're running Mac OS X. The current version is called Sierra. They upgrade it once a year at least. It's all Apple. They again have laptops and desktops. In their case, the laptops are more popular. Again, running on Intel chips. They have these things called Retina displays, which if you really want to look at my either my iPad or my MacBook, you can see they can access various browsers, and their devices have various memory capabilities. The hard disk size, 4 terabyte, 2 terabyte, that's a consideration in terms of how many photos are you going to take, how many videos are you going to have, because guess what? Those are the things that drive up memory usage, disk drive usage, and so on. On the other hand, the iPad and the iPhone, there's an iPad sitting there and an iPhone here. From Apple, there's a phone and a tablet. I listed their processors. These are all developed Apple took their processor development in-house. They used to run some Intel chips, but they have these Retina displays and various sizes. They also have something called the iPad Pro, which is almost a PC, not quite. And then you have various memory capabilities, sizes. This one, you sort of need to take into consideration how many programs you're going to have and how much you're going to be running at the same time. And how much you want to store. So with all these things, you take photos and you have an option to just put the photos out on the cloud. And you eventually get to a point where you say, okay, I'll put the photos on the cloud and I can bring them back in as I need them. But it's, again, media that's driving that. And then Google has its own Android operating system. They operate much like Windows does, where they license Windows out to various companies. Google licenses Android out to people like Samsung, LG, the new Blackberry Mobile, which I have here. There's Google Pixel has their own stuff. Now Android runs on phones, tablets, and it runs on, they're actually finding it's a useful operating system for special purpose devices. I happen to have a device at my home that I can run Skype on my TV set, and that's actually running on an Android operating system. They have various types of display technologies. Anybody notice how good the displays are getting these days? I mean, they're pretty real, right? Color brilliance, the whole thing. Gorilla Glass it's actually on most of these. It's special glass that Corning has developed. And in fact, they're building another whole new factory just for Gorilla Glass down, I think, in Tennessee or something like that. But Gorilla Glass is why when you drop your newest iPhone, the glass doesn't break. Okay. Again, on their devices, you've got Google Chrome and Firefox. I'll talk about, and again, they've got various. One of the beauties of the Android devices is whereas you're limited to 128 or 256 KB on the Apple devices, you can put a SD card into those devices and get much more memory onto your phone. So, but that's just to give you an overview of these are the four big players out there in various ways. They're all multi-billion-dollar capital valuation companies. They've got tons of resources. They're worldwide. Dublin, Ireland tends to have a lot of the European headquarters just because of some incentives in Ireland. But they're, companies. There's a project I was working on. Some of the developers were in Belarus. The publisher was in Munich. The interface developer was here in Toronto, and I was a project manager here in Toronto. And so it just giving you some of the scope of this thing. And guess what? We wrote the software so it would run on Windows, Mac, iPad, iPhone, and Google stuff. So it gives you, I'm just trying to give you some scope of why these are the big players. We'll get to Facebook later, but they're another one. So they've also developed what I call ecosystems. And again, with Apple, you've got your iPhone, iPad, your MacBook Air, and Apple has, as their cloud service, iCloud. Google has the Android on various devices. They have something called a Chromebook. And they offer all these things like Search, Google Drive, which is being replaced by something called Backup and Sync, Photos, Maps, Gmail, News, etc. And I'll come back to those in a moment to make the point I want to make about cloud services. Microsoft has brought out their Surface Pro tablets and some Surface PCs, very nice, well-designed things. You can see them at any Microsoft store. But their desktops, they license their software out, so Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. They're all part of the Microsoft ecosystem. And then on their website, they offer Office 365 as a web-based service. So instead of going and buying updates every 2 years, you buy an ongoing subscription for anywhere from $7 to $20 a month, and you get updates as soon as they have them out, and so on. OneDrive is their big mass storage service on the cloud. Azure is a service that a lot of companies run their web services on. So, Facebook, Dropbox was running on Amazon Web Services, and Dropbox has now decided they're so big they need to have their own computers and their own servers. But I'm just, a lot of what you use runs on either Azure or Amazon back out on the cloud. Now the reason I come back to this is I can get iCloud on my Windows PC. Obviously I'm going to get access to it on my MacBook as part of the operating system. But I can get iCloud on my Windows PC. I can access it on some of the Microsoft devices. All these Google services and apps, they're also available on MacBook, an iPhone, and iPad Air as applications. They're available on all these Windows PCs. And so for the cloud services, in fact, one of the problems I'm dealing with right now is I've got all three of those cloud services on my PC. OneDrive says, and they're all gathering up my photos. And in fact, OneDrive says you run out your limit for photos. But that doesn't matter because I have it on Google Photos, I have it on the Apple Photos and so on. So there's one of the issues we're going to have to deal with in the future is where do you really want to access your stuff? So there's sort of a cross-platform capability of all these cloud services. It's just because you buy a Windows PC doesn't mean you can't access iCloud. And it doesn't mean you can't access the Google applications and so on. So, and that's a huge trend that's evolved over the last 5 or 6 years. So let's talk about connecting in the interfaces. Personal computers, you connect via Ethernet or Wi-Fi, usually in your home, off desktops. Mobile smartphones and tablets, they can be connected by Wi-Fi or carrier networks. Somebody said, what's Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is putting an internet access network within a local location. Did you notice this morning we gave you an Wi-Fi password? All your devices you've brought in here, you can access the Wi-Fi network. You just go to the memory and company thing. It's on the screen out there right now. But Wi-Fi is what we call a local area network. It's a network you'll find within a hotel, within a restaurant, a coffee shop. You go to Tim Hortons, what does it say on the door? We got Wi-Fi. Go to Starbucks, we got Wi-Fi. Okay, why? Go by the Starbucks across the street from me and everybody's sitting at tables with their MacBooks. Okay, and but Memory and Company has Wi-Fi. In fact, they have 3 different Wi-Fi networks, one for their public and guests and one for their internal staff. Okay, so Wi-Fi, think of it almost as your outdoor wireless carriers, but within a building or within a local area. That's why we call them local area networks. I'll go to Bluetooth and NFC in a later discussion, but basically that's why I can have 12 devices. I've got my TV set hooked up to the internet. I've got this guy, he's hooked up to the internet. That guy, Alexa, she's hooked up to the internet. But I just wanted to get the idea here of what some of these terms mean. And the main interface you're going to find is a web browser home screen. I picked this one, it's called Internet Edge on the Microsoft PCs, basically because it does show a lot of websites here graphically, and they've got some news and weather and so on here on the home page. But basically, if I go to my Internet Edge browser and want to access a new website, I just have to click on F for Facebook or TD Bank to get to the bank, Globe and Mail. It'll sort of determine what are your most common sites you're going to and put them up there, but that doesn't prevent you from typing something else in to get it. Okay. Your interface on your tablets and smartphones is this applications. Okay, because on smartphones you're going to go to applications. This goes to the Google Chrome browser, Google Maps, Google Photos, Spotify, PGA Tour, right? If you go to my account on this, you'll find about the different kinds of beer I drank in Germany 3 years ago, or in Scotland and Ireland. Every day I'd put an entry in because the Isle of Skye Brewery in Scotland. There's similar ones. Kindle, it's for reading books. There's Outlook, email, that's from Microsoft. Tiny Beans, my daughter puts pictures of our grandson up every day. And she puts those pictures up and all the grandparents see them, all the aunts and uncles see them, and so on. But sort of a specific market thing. This Harmony, that's how I can control my whole TV setup at home through a device that comes from Logitech. But those are all I want to really get across the idea. Your primary interface on the smartphones and tablets is an interface like this that has all the applications. If I press this button here, you'll see later, I get the list of all the applications I've installed because I haven't put up everything yet on the main screens. Ones that are less common, I don't want on the main screens. I can go into that and get them. But the point is, what I'm really trying to say is, this is your gateway to get to other things on the internet. If you want to install somebody said Spotify. You want to put Spotify on your PC, you go in and you type Spotify on the search engine. It will take you to the website, and there will be something that says download our application. You want to install Skype, go to skype.com. It'll take you to their website, and it sees you're on a Windows computer. It says download the Windows application. If you're on a MacBook, it'll say download the Mac application. So that's one way to get to those applications, and we'll talk about app stores and so on the smartphones in a later discussion, but this is your primary interface when you turn on your phone. If I turn on my wife's iPhone, come on, and there's her primary interface, right? It's all those applications. If I do the same thing on my iPad, and even my MacBook has a screen called Launchpad. You go over and it shows all the applications, even though all the applications are shown on a toolbar at the bottom too, or the open applications. So let's talk a little bit more about smartphones and handheld. So it's communicating information at your fingertips. You're sending text messages out, you're writing up a letter, that sort of thing. You can do that all on your smartphone. It's voice, video, and text communications. The thing is, on the carrier, obviously it's a phone. That's voice communications. You also have something that comes with the phone service called SMS text messaging, where you can do text messages up to 140 characters. That's done on your phone. And the thing about SMS is it goes out over the same channel as your phone calls, because it's also a signaling channel that the phone networks use. But the 140 character limit is because that's all it can handle. But it is something where you can say, where are you now, and get an answer right away. My son arrived at an airport yesterday. I said, did we pick you up at Toronto Airport? Because we were going to go to downtown. He says, oh no, I landed at Porter. I got that all in text messages. So but the voice, video, and text, as you'll see in another session, goes way beyond that. Cameras. They all have cameras. I want to come in. Yeah. And take a picture. It's all right, I won't. And I just go in. Good, I got a picture. What I find I'm doing is I go to some site and things are moving around a bit. I'm taking several pictures. Does it cost me film? No. The only biggest issue is how much of it do I really want to store? And I might get rid of the ones that I don't like, because sometimes they'll come slightly out of focus or hazy or whatever. So we have this applications ecosystem, which I talked about just a few minutes ago in showing you the slide with all the applications. But that's a whole developer system. There's millions of developers writing applications for these devices, okay? And the developers make a lot of money as well. You've got keyboards. Mostly today they're software, but I'll tell you the story about this a little later. But guess what? I got the Blackberry keyboard on this device, right? And there are benefits to having it. I think it's the main one with a keyboard on it now. There might be a couple of others. But you also have all these soft keyboards, which are basically keyboards come up your screen and you type stuff in. And there's a feature with all these keyboards called predictive text. When I write stuff on this phone, I might type 25, 30% of the characters, because it'll recognize what word I want to have come up, and I just go flick, and that puts the word up. That way I don't make spelling mistakes too. So you got location-based services, maps, tracking, and so on. To get my way out here this morning, and there'll be a slide later in more detail, I use Google Maps. I didn't use it just to find this place, because I was out here last week. But I used it because it tells me where the traffic obstructions are, what's the fastest way, etc. Recently, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I went to Kitchener for lunch. And I got down to the Guelph area, and Google Maps all of a sudden said, don't continue on 401, go up through Guelph. There's been a major crash on the 401 that's blocking all the traffic. So, so I sort of use it to tell me where's the traffic, where's stuff going to slow down. And Google will figure out what is the fastest way to get somewhere. This morning it said it was going to take the same amount of time to come out on the 407 as to come out in the 401. So which one do you think I took? Yeah, you've never seen the 401 so empty. At 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I didn't even have to slow down between 427 and 400. And the tracking, by the way, all the photos I take, it knows where I took them. So it knows what are the photos I took in Ireland, what are the photos I took in Edinburgh, what are the photos I took at the air show last week. You know, it says CNE grounds or something like that. It says Edinburgh, Scotland, or might even have the actual, you know, Royal Yacht Britannia or the Belfast Titanic building or something like that. So it knows where you took it, it records your time, and all the rest. And the tracking can also be used. If I wanted to, I could have sent a message to Maria from that Google Maps and said, for the next 45 minutes, you can see where I'm at. And it would give her updates every 5 minutes or so. Multimedia, music, photos, videos, huge. We're going to talk about those more later on. And then it's got sensors in it. So it's got a GPS sensor, which is critical. GPS is a network of satellites that got put up by the US military going around the world that allow you to come down and detect where you are. For strategic reasons, until about 15 years ago, it would only tell you where you are to within about a kilometer. They realized if it's going to become that busy on a consumer basis, it better tell you where you are to within a couple of meters, which it more or less usually does. The accelerometer, gyroscope, some of that's, one of those is, the accelerometer is the thing sometimes you can shake something and that will make it happen on the phone. The gyroscope is why I can have my phone be either portrait or landscape. Okay, you can take photos, be portrait or landscape. There's a compass inside. The hull for flip covers means that when I actually close this, if it's open, it still leaves something. It knows I've closed it, but it leaves something on the screen. So, and if you had a Blackberry in the past, you knew you could stick it in a pocket and it would turn off until you got a phone call or something or other, because that pocket holster had a detector in to figure that out. So there's all sorts of sensors, and it amazes me how, having sort of physics degrees, how they've done these things in such micro component size devices and all this microelectronics. And then of course the other issue is battery life. It's gotten better. The iPhone can get through most of a day, I think. My new Blackberry KEYone, they actually didn't put in the fastest processor because it drained the battery too fast. So they put in the next level down of processor. It's still, the applications come up very fast, but the battery life is 30 hours. And that's been my experience with it over the last few weeks. I no longer have to carry my spare charger around, so I have to charge it up in the middle of the day. So battery life is a huge issue with smartphones. So cameras, they take photos and you can do videos. John Tory, you know who John Tory is, right? When he's doing a presentation, whether he's in San Francisco or in Toronto, when he's got a press conference, he will have somebody put it up on Facebook Live. I get a notification. John Tory is talking about a new housing development, etc. And you watch him live. You know, you don't have to go to CP24 to watch it. Okay? It'll give you a notification. You tap on it, and there you are. You're watching them. But videos are huge. And it's video recordings. You've seen it on YouTube and so on. This is all going to be on YouTube. But I can show you pictures of my granddaughters first learning to dance in the house. Pictures of, I captured some pictures, some at the Pan Am Games. I was able to capture some pictures of races and that sort of stuff. I can take pictures of my own family activities as videos and so on. You no longer, the whole video camera market, except for professionals like Michael here, has gone away. Right, Mark? Yeah. Yeah. And the same is happening with consumer cameras too. You know that Kodak is in basically in bankruptcy because the market for film has gone away. The market, they didn't catch up with Canon and a couple of other people in developing better new cameras. There's still a few reasons to buy cameras, but mostly it's those big ones. You see the long shot ones that, like when I was at the RBC Canadian Open, we were trying to keep everybody quiet, but then you got a cameraman with a telescope lens this long trying to catch a picture, right? But the whole market for photography has changed because of what you can do here. I just mentioned multiple display resolutions because you get different sizes. The iPhone 7 has one size, the 7 Plus is bigger, so it gets bigger resolution. Resolution helps with the quality of the picture. That's why you do get, having these various resolutions, why you get such good quality images on your screen. But it's just trying to give you some idea of, and resolution does play a role, especially with photographs when you want to print them and so on. So a smaller resolution, maybe you can only put it on a 4:6 print. You get a very high resolution, you can put it on 11:17 paper and it will print. So I talked a bit about camera resolutions. They all have two cameras. There's the 12 to 18 megapixel high resolution camera that you use for doing your scenery. For most of the time I'm using that. And the front camera, who's heard of selfies? Who's Canada's most famous selfie user?
Trudeau.
Trudeau. Okay? Because he's got a front camera on his phone, and you have one too. It just irks me to see, though, you're touring some museum or cathedral in Europe, and somebody's got a selfie stick, and they got to take a picture of them at every little place they've been at in that cathedral or in that museum and so on. So you can get carried away on that and that sort of stuff. But yeah, the front view is mostly for selfies. In fact, Apple now calls it their selfie camera. And I just talk about video resolutions. The main one that you want to have working is this one, 1080p, because that's what your TV is doing these days. But you also have some TVs run with this slightly lower resolution called 720 HD. But most today, that was a limit when I bought a TV set about 10 years ago. The one I bought last year actually goes up to the 4K, which gives you some very, you know, the 1080 HD is pretty damn good. The 4K just gives you a little bit of extra quality and so on. So those are some of the trends in that area. So that's the iPhone 7. This is actually the setup on this phone because that's my wife's right, that finger, that's her thumbprint, and that's my fingerprint. Okay, so that, but nobody else can get in. And the same applies on this Blackberry KEYone. That's my fingerprint, that's my thumbprint, and I just hold it over the space bar and I'm logged in. You don't have to type in anything else. And in fact, that MacBook has the same capability. I turn it on, and I just have to tap my finger, and and it brings up the screen. So Touch ID is becoming big for a lot of these new devices. So Bluetooth connectivity is one more type of wireless thing, and it's really the wireless within a room. And it's the one, it's called it's almost near-field communications. So at home, I can hook this up and go to Spotify Music and say, play it over Bluetooth, and it comes out of the speakers for my television set. Okay? So it's a wireless connection to speakers between here and there. This Google Home device, that's a Bluetooth connection. Okay? You can have it, come on. Medical devices. I left my Fitbit. I took a shower this morning, forgot to put my Fitbit back on. But that measures my steps I take, measures sleep, measures heart rate, that sort of stuff. And in my case, it's finally a watch I can use because I was allergic to all the metal watches. And the thing is that, you'll see an example later on, it recorded the fact that I walked 500,000 steps over 8 weeks at the Pan Am Games. You know, you can monitor. You're supposed to walk 10,000 steps a day to keep your health up, and on diets and so on, it'll tell you if you make that sort of thing. So that's one more. How many of you, any of you realize that you can connect your phone to your audio on your cars? When I drove out this morning, I could have had Spotify playing in my car. I was too focused on the Google Maps thing because I needed the directions. But I could have had Spotify running in the background instead of listening to the local classical FM station. So it's now connecting your phones to your car audio systems in the newer cars. Okay, it also connects between PCs and tablets for sharing files and photographs and so on. There's also a feature coming out called Apple Pay and Google Play. You go to Apple Play, it's securely got your credit card information available. You know how now you can tap a credit card to get it accepted? The same technology, you just tap this on the payment device and your charge is made. So I have one set up for TD Bank because they're not on Apple Pay or Google Pay, and one set up for Google Pay, which uses the credit card we use at Loblaws and so on. And so the one thing I find out about it is you're waiting in line and you have to get the application open and set up and make sure it's working and so on. So but basically it's, again, used for these payment systems. So let's go, first I'm going to talk about a couple of phones. Let's go to the iPhone. Current one is the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus. That's what, this is a 7. On Tuesday, you'll hear about the iPhone 8 and the 7S. Apple has one of their big Apple announcement days on Tuesday. So go to apple.ca on Tuesday and you'll get the whole 9 yards. It'll probably be an iPhone 8 and some new iPhone 7 versions. And they're going to offer a new version of their operating system in September, tied in with these new ones. But the beauty is that it will also work on all the devices that I have here already, the iPads, the iPhones. If you have an iPhone 6 or later, the new operating system will work, and it'll have some new features. I don't know what they all are yet, but it'll have some new features that you can do with your phone. You know, so it's software drives what you can do with your phone as much as the hardware. You get the hardware installed once, but you can always upgrade the software, which has its advantages and disadvantages, but basically you get new features on your phone as you go along. And then cameras. there's really, the 7 has a single camera. The 7 Plus has two cameras, which has to work with dealing with very close-ups and having stuff shadowy in the background, but a focus on your primary object and so on. But for the most part, the 7 is fine, and the 7 Plus if you want a really enhanced camera. And it obviously is a participant in that full Apple ecosystem I talked about, iPad, MacBooks, iCloud, but you can also run Google Maps and Google Search and Google News and all the Google products on it as well. You just download them as applications. And you can run Microsoft OneDrive on it. And there are over 2.2 million apps in the Apple App Store. Just talking a bit more about the camera, 12 megapixel rear, 7 in the front, which they now call the FaceTime camera, or the selfie camera. And they call it FaceTime too, but you'll see why in a minute. There are several modes you can have: a time-lapse, slow-mo, video, photo, a square photo, or you can take panorama photos. Even on a couple of my recent trips, I was showing people how to do panorama. Most people don't realize you can do that. There's some options. You can set flash. HDR is a technique where it actually takes 3 pictures and sort of takes a low light one, a normal one, and a highlight one, and tries to bring them all together. So you get, it's especially useful for where you have both dark and light combined in a picture, and you might have a light area of sky and a dark area underneath. So HDR helps deal with that. You can delay your photos so you can run around and get yourself in the picture, and there's something for adjusting the hue of the photos. You can take and send your photos through their message application, email, Facebook, Messenger, Skype, many more. Those are the 2 camera things again. It's got AirPlay. AirPlay is something, that's why from my iPad, I'm running stuff on that screen out in the entranceway. AirPlay is a feature in all the Apple devices. At home, when I wanted to go through some trips for my 50th wedding anniversary event 3 weeks ago, I took 10,000 pictures and cut them down to 200 and made a movie, and then I just could run, I wanted to run it through some of my family before we showed it. I just ran it through this AirPlay onto my TV screen at home through an Apple TV box. So, and like I say, we're using that right now to go from my iPad to show something on that display panel in the entranceway.
How can you learn that? How to do?
First, you need all the Apple products, okay, including Apple TV on your TV. And then you just pull down the bottom. It says turn on.
I don't know how to use none.
Yeah, well, AirPlay on the MacBooks is only on the more recent ones. It may come up, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to come up on the new iOS upgrade for older ones. And of course, you can send them out to iCloud and all the more. And they do 4K video at this 30 and 60 frames per second. They do it at lower resolutions as well, but that's the one that ensures some future. So here's an Android phone. Blackberry no longer builds hardware or sells phones. What they do is, which is a lot of the common practice, and even Apple does it. Where are these made? Where are the iPhones made?
China? No.
China and Taiwan, with a company called Foxconn. Okay? They aren't produced in the States. This is one of Trump's big complaints, you know. But they're not produced in the States. They're all produced in China because they have the lower cost of manufacturing. And just as importantly, because I've had experience dealing with these Chinese vendors, they understand hardware. They understand how to get all these compact things in and so on. So, and they understand manufacturing processes. So this, basically, it's a company in China that manufactures it. There's a new subsidiary set up called Blackberry Mobile. It uses a security enhanced Android system. And you access the over 3 million apps in the Google Play Store. And it has some extra apps like this Hub Plus, which basically I can go to the Hub app and I can look at messages in Facebook, Twitter, email, SMS, all in one application without having to go to the different applications. The keyboard also acts as a trackpad. And in fact, it participates in Google's Android ecosystem. And the reason I can use the trackpad, the keyboard as a trackpad on this to make manual settings on my camera and when I'm using it. So it's 12 megapixels, it's about the same as the iPhone, has photo, panorama, video, slow modes, flash and delay, and the format ratio, which is like it's 3:2 or 16:9. And you can adjust various aspects manually. And again, does the 4K video at 30 frames. And I just put this up as a third example, the Samsung Galaxy S8. It's got this infinity screen, which means it really goes right to the edge. They're a participant in the Google Android system. They can add Blackberry Hub Plus. It's $300 more than the KEYone. And there are others. There's LG as a manufacturer, and Google has its own hardware called Pixel. And there are really actually over 4,000 licensees of Android operating system. So because it's used in cars, the automobiles, it's used on TV, some of the TV sets coming out have decided to go with Android, and so on. So now some other devices out there, the Apple TV, Apple Watch. Apple TV we're running here, Apple Watch you can have on your wrist, and you can play Dick Tracy. There's your Apple Watch. This is your controller. And Google has their own Chromecast, which sort of plays a similar role to Apple TV. We have these new voice assistants.
Sorry, I'm not sure how to help with that.
Thank you. That's the Google Home box. Amazon has one, the Alexa there. Apple's going to come out with one on the phone in December called HomePod. And then you can run internet on your TV. But, oh, here's a voice assistant. I asked 3 different devices. It was the 5th inning of a Blue Jays game last Sunday. And I called them all in. And I said, what's the score in the Blue Jays game? And these are the responses I got from the Google Assistant, that device. Cortana Windows, which comes with a Windows PC, and Siri on my MacBook. But there's other things that the internet are coming to. Last week at the X, I found this Samsung Family Hub. You might think of it as, what do you think this really is? It's a refrigerator. But guess what? There's a full Android panel here. And when I first saw it, it had the Google search engine up. But it will also do things like calculate your to-do lists and build your grocery lists and so on. And it even has a camera. You can record what you've put in, and it keeps a record of what's in your fridge and what you've taken out, and helps you build your grocery list.
The Internet of Things, right?
Sort of, yeah. And finally, new cars. You're going to have, you see there's an iPhone, but there it is running on a Chevrolet car. Okay, so you're going to have access on automobiles. So they're replicated on automobile systems. Apple and Google actually partner with a different division of Blackberry. There are safety features they have to look into in doing this. And again, we're going to have self-driving cars. And again, those self-driving cars you hear about are going to be using the internet. So while I've covered, for most of this presentation, covered the main ones you're going to use, I'm just trying to give you an idea of what's coming.